So this event is actually quite significant in the sense that today is Mandela's Day. Right? And what we're doing is exactly in line with that. So, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, friends, welcome to the 2024 President's Invitation Lecture. Can you just give a clap for this? My name is Pichi Bukara. I'm from the University of Johannesburg. And I'm quite sad that this event was actually supposed to be held by the university. But be it as it may, we should all focus, on what is to be discussed over here. And I promise you, it's going to be something very, very, very interesting. But I did not receive any mandate to actually introduce the guest speaker. The person who's going to do that is none other than the president of the South African Institute of Electrical Engineers, Mr. Pascal Motswai Saiee. Did I get it correct?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Welcome, please. Thank you, President.
Thank you.
Over to you.
Thank you, Prof. Bukara. Yes, today is Mandela Day, and thank you so much for coming through today and be with us here today, especially in light of the fact that actually we found out that there's going to be the State of the Nation address as well. So maybe that's why some of our members are not here today, unfortunately. So these things happen. But yes, thank you for those that came through. There's a recording that's going to happen, and then at least on our Saiee TV, which is our YouTube channel, that's where the rest of our members can actually catch up on. So thank you. Yes, my name is Pastor Mutwasele. We as the South African Institute of Electrical Engineers have been around since 1909. So I suppose we are now 115 years old. Yes. I'm sure you know our history, but it's a very, it started by engineers, fraternal organization, engineers coming together and starting this institute. So one of our flagship events actually happens to be this one, the President's Invitation Lecture, where the President actually invites a prominent person in industry to come and address our wider audience, including our memberships, in terms of technologies and anything that's actually cutting edge. So today I have the pleasure of introducing our speaker today, Ms. Nomso Kana. She'll be talking on the impact of 4IR technologies, as you can see on the screen there, on engineering practice. So as a bio, or not really a bio, more like a synopsis of the talk, the fourth industrial revolution has transformed engineering practice in South Africa with technologies like artificial intelligence, the Internet of Things, and big data analytics. Smart grids use advanced sensors and communication networks to optimize electricity distribution and reduce energy consumption. Digital twin modeling allows engineers to simulate different scenarios and optimize system performance. In a recent case study, a South African engineering firm successfully implemented 4IR technologies to enhance the efficiency of a water treatment plant. So I will, without much ado, let me read her bio. Nomso Kana, a distinguished nuclear scientist by profession. In 2019, she was appointed as one of the esteemed commissioners for the 4IR within the presidency. Her extensive expertise extends beyond the realm of nuclear science, energy, policies, and connectivity, and into the dynamic area of broadband infrastructure, where she leads her own company. In addition to a pivotal role in the 4IR Commission, Ms. Kana lends her valuable insights and leadership to various boards within the ICT sector. A commitment to advancing industry in demand skills in the energy, ICT sectors, and is further exemplified through active involvement in non-governmental organizations dedicated to women and the youth economic development. Ms. Kana's organization runs advanced domain naming system training, cybersecurity special focus on vulnerability detection and firewalls built-in. Her multifaceted career and dedication to fostering positive change underscore her commitment to driving progress and inclusivity on both national and global scales. So without much ado from me, I know you didn't come to listen to me. Ladies and gentlemen, the speaker for today, Ms. Nomsokana.
So happy to be among everyone here, all the professional engineers, members of Saiee, and all the technicians and engineering's wannabes. So happy to see also your students that are here and also have made time to come and just have this talk, this engagement. I'm really excited about it. As a scientist, I'm usually in a group of engineers, and there's always that back and forth discussion on which discipline is better. Scientists are better people. No, let's not even go to that discussion. So let's get started on this topic. The University of Johannesburg has really been on the lead regarding spearheading 4IR technologies, just not from the use in industry, but also from the learning and also education 4.0. Because the realization that this fourth industrial revolution is not coming, but it is in motion. It actually has been realized since 2012. However, upon doing this, upon the implementation of these 4IR technologies, we all know all of them, they are not new technologies. For example, AI was invented or discovered in 1962. And Nicola, at that time, he was just building a system that can just have a machine-to-machine learning. And fortunately, at that time, it was when they had come really into the second industrial, it was a transition between 1 and 2. But what I've realized and also have picked up in the engineering sector, I've transitioned as a nuclear scientist from the reactor, so I was specifically working in the radioisotopes labs, where I was doing purification for radioisotopes that I used for cancer treatments, specifically thyroid. Some might know that this South Africa is number 3 in the world when it comes to production of iodine 131 isotopes. And that is usually used for the voice box cancer treatment. But, prior one goes into removal of your voice box, you then have to go through that. But if the treatment is successful, you don't have to remove it. So we're number 3. And funny enough, China currently, in the past 2 years, the USA was number 1. China is number 1 right now, and the USA is number 2. But we supply to them. Funny how the economics work on that stage. So just going into this, the fourth industrial revolution technologies such as AI, and specifically the combination of AI and IoT, is widely used nowadays in engineering firms. And the engineering firms that are specifically in that are engineering firms that I've interacted with in the water infrastructure, as well as civil and built environments. And it is so happened that just recently in my company we are currently working in the Northern Cape. And in the Northern Cape, we are in an area where there is a project I'm going to speak about. It's very exciting, Buchebai. this is where they will be building a hydrogen plant with aims of producing quite a lot of exports that are required for the next 100 years. And I was then brought in to really give advisory on the engineering systems, just on power. And it was so fortunate for me to interact with this engineering company that is working on water salination, water treatment plants. I'm going to speak about that case study also. And they were telling me how the combination of an AI system, how it's so important that engineers nowadays, you have to be so deeply invested in machine learning and as well as building our own generative AI, because that is going to lead quite some of the best firms in South Africa. And as we're discussing that, I actually realized that nowadays they have moved away from the physical prototyping on how in water infrastructure, water treatments, they will do the prototyping just using physical substances, but now they're fully fledged using 3D. And I do think that 3D machinery is being used quite a lot in UJ. That's why you've built the 2,000 rands house or something to that effect, and just using a 3D machine. And that is quite amazing for an engineering department to reach those heights. In these interactions, this is what I've gathered is there's such a huge transformation coming, and that transformation is really in the utilization of 4IR technologies. I don't even want to mention them because I'm preaching to a converted room here. Those 4IR technologies in South Africa specifically, you must remember this, a combination of an AI system and IoT environments work very well. And the way that Mr. Van Wyk was telling me is that they have come to a point where they are deeply enriched in investing in big data sets, where now they want to train their own AI system and really build our own, because nowadays we are just consuming international AI models that are currently in the market, right? Who's using ChatGPT? Who's using Gemini from Google? A lot of us. Yeah. So, 4IR, the difference that we are seeing now in this industrial revolution is, well, first and foremost, while I was serving in the 4IR Commission, we realized that obviously the 1 and the 2 and the 3, Africa did not participate, because we were in those dire stages as the continent. But now, when the inception now of 4IR, and by the way, it did start in Germany. It did not just come up with a discussion in the World Economic Forum with all the rich people thinking, how then do we control the markets of the world? Let's put in 4IR. No, it actually started in Germany. And this is where they really wanted to convert their production of artisans, especially electrical. Germany is built by artisans, technicians, and as well as engineers. That's why it's an industrial country. And it started off as Industrial 4.0. And it was really to utilize now the convergence of all these technologies into one, so that the bio, the physical, the digital can meet together and produce what can be utilized in today's markets. But if you really look into these technologies, okay, let me try and use your pointer. Not this one. Oh, there we go. Where's God? Okay, there we go. So the very first evolution, it was mostly mundane. It was farming, and it was now the transition from those farming to mechanization. But this is where it began with knowledge formulation. So the first revolution was just on knowledge formulation. So in each and every revolution, they take about 100 years, a century, to actually convert and then transmit into the next. And the second IR, you look at how things usually converted. That's where now mass production came through, assembly lines and electric energy discoveries, or rather implementation, because electrical energy has been around, but now the implementation and getting into industry took a bit of a time. And this is where we had knowledge evolution. And now the mechanization part that really evolved into mass production. That's where there were factories in London. So they used to do a lot of apparel work and lots of mega mass production of factories because of that mass production that started off. And then it went into knowledge distribution. So the 3IR. Funny enough, when we were in the commission, we had to go around the country to really look at the different areas where South Africa is. The affluent places where you see that 4IR is really thriving, right? You go to environments, companies, the JSE, you see that they're using data crawlers, they're using AI-enabled data crawlers. They have so many data set, and you could see that, well, in that whole business district, they are really thriving on 4IR. Then we went into an area called Marble Hall. It's in the boundaries between Mpumalanga and Limpopo. And we went there and we were testing on that day drones because it's such a rich area agriculturally. And we were testing drones, so we wanted to see the emerging farmers on how, the first impression, first reactions, so on really testing drones and utilizing some of the IoT sensors that they can use in their soil determination. So we then lifted one drone. All the farm workers started running. I did not laugh like you were laughing, CEO. I held it because to them it was such a shock because they thought, and it was one of those big ones, not the typical ones that are used now for entertainment, but it's one of the big ones because they thought to them, you are lifting this off and it's just going to crash on our heads. But we were in an area, such a huge hectareage, and they were doing peanut farming and all different kinds of macadamia, and it was such an adventure because most of them, they believe that it takes so long for them to cover the area that they even run over the season, and they then needed technological enhancements to actually understand how do they work around this. Well, at that time it was late 2019, just before COVID times. And it was so important for them to say that, come and demonstrate this as we literally have 3G as our network. And now you are talking of a strategy, a 4IR strategy that must be implemented across the country. Yet we are in an area where we think we are just in the 1IR. And we then did that business case to really understand now, how do you utilize these modern technologies and implement them in front of someone who is just ordinary. They're just working and they have no idea, keep all your IoT stuff to yourself, I'm just working. So it was such a great demonstration because we got to understand that resistance to change is there, but also the excitement to see how this can assist them. It was also there. And I must tell you that today, one of the companies I know and the Limpopo government was then commissioned to go and help these emerging farmers because they were coming together as a corporate to produce peanuts and nuts and that sort of thing. And they had lots of land and they needed technology. So today they have IoT equipment that is assisting them to really understand the soil, and they have equipment that can give them precision analysis on weather patterns. that is great stuff that happened then. So as we got to 3IR, it's really about knowledge distribution, because this is where now the fame of internet started, and this is where automation came about. You look at the Mercedes-Benz plant in East London. It was launched around it was just before the commissioning of the Kuber 4IR plant in 1983. I might have my date wrong. I'll check it out and just revert on that. But it was around the time the Kuber plant in Cape Town was commissioned. So Kuber nuclear plant, one of the pressurized water reactors, it was commissioned in 1984. And at that time, there was quite a lot of decision making regarding really building the whole electrification system for South Africa. And at that very same time, there was a lot of interest from international automotive companies to come into the country and start building their plants. But in essence, today, where we are, it's Industrial Revolution 4.0. And it's that convergence and emergence of all these technologies that can really be very efficient in really driving markets, and their utilization can really be brought about in really accelerating quite a lot of discoveries. I'll speak about one of the discoveries that happened while we were in the commission. So we did open an AI institution, and the first patent on AI systems, specifically in the medical sector, came from South Africa. And it was registered by the company Adams & Adams, and the guys that came through, their technology currently, it's being used by pharmaceuticals. So 2019, the 4IR was commissioned. 2020, we got into a period of the pandemic, and one of the most important things that happened over there was also the idea of really converging different government departments to provide data sets so that there is that track and tracing of COVID. And we had Google that came into the country, that assisted in really assisting in providing thematic areas for track and tracing of COVID. I know there was a big hoo-ha about that, and there was a lot of very interesting narratives about how 5G is causing COVID. And, even to really convert people's knowledge around that time, because you were staying at home, you were working at home. It was now the commission that allowed most of these departments to release spectrum, so there's a wide reach of knowledge, and really to remove and terminate misinformation that was going around that time. And that was quite good, because a lot of data set that was used at that time, which was our metadata, was coming from Home Affairs, and the Department of Digital Technologies worked with Home Affairs, they worked with the Department of Health also, and that was how then they could really work around to determine the dates on when the first COVID trials, or rather the vaccination, would come through. And I know it's such a huge debate when that happened, because there was a lot of misinformation, but the essence now of using big data played a role for the country, and also how the commission, out of the strategies to utilize 4IR technologies, was used. And just moving on, I did want to share about these because they really played a role in propelling some industries, specifically engineering firms that I've interacted with. In the commission, they worked on developing recommendations that are part of the strategy. You would see nowadays there's a lot of companies doing education 4.0 to what I call it, but they're doing a lot of 4IR skills, as they call it. And these are just skills to bridge you into understanding how 4IR works. I must make mention that in the commission, one of the things we determined to do was, number one, ensure that 4IR is not a silver bullet. It's not there to solve everything. One of the major challenges in South Africa is the top three, is unemployment, poverty, and inequality. Excuse me. So most questions that people would ask, how are you going to bring these technologies in while they're going to, increase unemployment? How are you going to use 4IR to really solve poverty issues? But the way we've structured that strategy is that, number one, it is not a silver bullet. It is there to bring technology that can assist in solving the socio-economic challenges in the country. Hence, we got to these there were about 8 recommendations, and most importantly is the investment in human capital. Human capital, that's where you see now, I think I did pick up an article written by some of the members of Saiee on how Education 4.0 in electrical as well as engineering fields is so important, that machine learning, building AI systems must be embedded the minute a student starts saying, I'm going to do an engineering degree from first year, for example. And the importance of investing in human capital is that South Africa it's a youthful country. Our average age is 23, and it is female. So the demographic dividend, it says that we must constantly invest in education so that we can get dividends of that. Is it happening? That's a debate. And obviously, I spoke about the AI Institute. It was launched at UJ, also TUT has one, but the main aim of these institutes is that they must be in academic institutions, so that there is that intersection between private sector as well as public, and now in the academia, so that the knowledge transference and also knowledge sharing and exchange can happen in these institutes, but specifically on AI. Because AI is believed is going to be the major 4IR technology that will drive economies. And most importantly, establishing a platform for advanced manufacturing in new materials. New materials department at CSIR is quite thriving right now. I'm sure you've heard of the deficit in the world on microchips manufacturing. And most of the Southern African countries have those elements that are utilized in the microchip manufacturing or production. And the tension between the US and Thailand, because Thailand is the biggest country that produces microchips. So in all your devices, there is a microchip. In everything that is electronic, there is a microchip. And the department, or rather the research unit on advanced manufacturing new materials at CSIR, they then have made a list of the, I would call it the longevity and the lifespan of these elements that are found in the SADC. And when one looks at manganese and some of our prominent elements in the country that we mine, it means that we have a chance to actually start the manufacturing of these microchips. So the 4IR Commission then said that it's important that there is a platform for research that must be established. There must be also a new way of getting enterprises to actually commercialize what has been researched. And I hope some of the engineers here are looking into getting into that space where they manufacture these advanced or materials that are used. And obviously, the securing and availing data to enable innovation. There are about 4 cloud hyper data centers in the country. Azure Microsoft is actually one of the biggest currently that houses our government data. So your in and out at the hospital, all that data, your metadata, is actually sitting there. So there was an enforcement of localizing your data, because in the past our data was stored in Europe and in all the other hyperscale data centers that exist in the US, or mostly in the Western countries. So that really ensured that we have that. And just moving fast on these ones is the incentive for future industries. They are, the National Treasury actually made a budget on how they can really put incentives on companies that can come into the commercialization and enterprising of 4IR technologies that can really assist our economy. And building 4IR infrastructure was specifically involved in this one, and this includes now ensuring that the undersea cables that land in our country, our seashores, they actually build their hyperscale data centers in the country. You'll see that South Africa is in a fortunate position in the continent, because we sit on the southern tip. So this allows the west to pass through and the east also. So we have these cables that are here for international traffic. And for them to come and terminate and get into Central Africa, they have to go via South Africa. And the importance of that is it gives us now an advantage and a leverage to build hyperscale data centers and have, a wide range of skills that are required for those data centers. Amazon Web Services have courses, a free course to actually study cloud architect, and I think it can be really handy for an engineer. And so we reviewed and amended close to 166 policies that were going to be a barrier in implementing all these recommendations. And most of them, they are being passed currently in Parliament. Well, before the new GNU Parliament that we have right now, I believe most also will be passed. And establishing a 4IR strategy council in the presidency. That one has just been very complicated because everyone wanted to be in government, and no one, long story. But anyway, I just want to get into these ones that are really of interest for everyone in the room. As I was mentioning, the engineering firm that I've been interacting with, so it's in the water reticulation, water infrastructure, water treatments. And they did say that, my company is currently in discussion with them to really build a 4G LTE private network for them. And they are looking to ensure that their real-time systems, they're quite efficient, and the time then my company gets a spectrum, then we can have a dedicated network that is just for their treatment plants in the country. So they did mention that, in all their studies and research, in which I concur, analytics and intelligence are the most important 4IR technologies that are required. So data analytics, AI, is really useful in the engineering firms. And one of the critical things that they want to work on is a virtual reality, where there is now that human and a machine interaction. And virtual environments are quite tricky because they do require, in some instances, if you want them to be real time, in the case that we are working on, that you must have a very a resilient network without any disruptions. And we've been, I think load shedding right now is a thing of the past, I hope, yes? And so that disturbs our telecoms network. It disturbs how then communication occurs. So when you have these augmented reality systems and environments, it's quite important that you have a very resilient telecoms infrastructure. And I believe in all engineering disciplines, that is quite very prevalent, because for any data-driven decisions you need to make, you always need to have data that is at your availability and that you are able to analyze. Okay. So in the mining sector, interesting enough, so there's quite a huge boom happening in the Northern Cape regarding manganese, iodine. Canada and Australia are making investments in building the open pit mines for those metals. They're using quite a lot of autonomous vehicles, but once again, that requires a very good telecoms infrastructure. So in what I've seen in the industry, because I'm also an entrepreneur, is there's a huge convergence now happening between telecoms, the ability to ensure that your systems are on real time, and you build private networks under 4G advanced 4G LTE, and also to ensure that there is that reliability and of your real-time systems. So this is coming up very fondly in those areas, and they are looking into using such. So I want to share about the case studies, and I promise I'll be done. I've been sharing a bit on the water treatment plants, and I'm going to go into Boegebaai, the hydrogen plant, and the Tayspan Gen 4 nuclear plant. So these two are actually upcoming mega projects that are coming in the country. And I believe, the stats are really not on our side when it comes to engineering, because in the developed countries, it's 1 to 200 or 350. That's the ratio of one engineer to a population index. But in South Africa, we're sitting at 1 to 3,100. So the urgency to produce more engineers, more technicians is really very big, especially now that our country is really embarking on ensuring that we have reliable energy systems in the country for electrification, so that the country becomes industrialized. So just a quick one. I'll not mention the company because they're still in their piloting phase and they have great results. I believe if I want to be invited again, I'll then say, okay, that company is ready to come and share about their studies. Then I can be invited again. Now, CEO. Right. So engineering company X, they are working towards increasing water utilities and the process efficiency. They have treatment plants, or rather they're working those treatment plants in the Free State, in the semi-arid, or rather dry provinces in the country. So they're working on those because there was a blue drop report that emphasized that we, as much as in 2015, we had, prevalent drought, and it's not like South Africa cannot handle that, because those droughts were really caused by the climate changes. You'll see that rainfall is really late. It's supposed to be in the last weeks of August, or the first weeks of September. But now it comes around December or November. So the climate changes have really disturbed our infrastructure, water infrastructure. So they're working in those couple of water treatment plants. And for them, they've ran since 2018 a pilot to really understand how they can utilize an AI in the loop AI system, human in the loop AI system. And this really, it does require that you must have an environment that is already IoT enabled. So your sensors must already be there, and your environment already must have an enabling environment that allows you to plug in your AI system. So they've piloted this whole solution to really ensure that it calibrates the usage of pumps and without the need of a human intervention. And in their calculation, they've seen in studies that it can really save them 20% or save government 25% on spending, cost implications in these water treatment plants, and it can really ensure that there is now a developed solution that can give us data to actually make our water treatment plants to be more robust, right? So they've worked on this, and funny enough, in the area that they've worked in, they've worked also with Red Water to bring out the studies to ensure that it's within provinces that have most population. And so the pilot system was really built on an IoT existing infrastructure, as I've mentioned, and it does optimize the day-to-day water operations. I'm not going to share good news, but it's predicted that from October 2024, since there will be an optimization of our water reticulation system that comes from Lesotho. So Gauteng, Free State, we depend on water that comes from Lesotho. So there will be water shedding in those times. And they have mentioned that it's going to start around October 2024. And if we have good treatment plants, that can be avoided. But I suppose there is a work in plan. I have faith. Yeah, so this is actually the case where it's a very wide range of close to 37 kilometers of pipes coming directly from Lesotho and landing into our boundaries in the country. And, Lesotho has more water, more than its population. If we get into an area or in a times where, Mr. President, now water is a commodity, they're going to be rich, huh? But yeah, it's the country is really endowed with lots of hydro, the hydro elements. So it occurs that this optimization of this infrastructure is going to disturb Gauteng, the Free State. Free State is our bread basket province, because that's where we make most of the wheat. That's where the agricultural wheat farming is happening, and that's where our bread, the origin of our bread, comes from. So when we were discussing this, and it came to our mind that it's so important that nowadays the inclusion of AI systems in the curriculum, Prof, is so important that there should be practical in real-time projects that students are doing using these challenges that exist already. So that South Africa is in a point where engineering students, they produce a portfolio of evidence that I've worked in a project that had these adverse issues, and then our contribution towards this has assisted in really averting all of that. And I hope you can see this this image. But the areas with that blue drop is the areas, or rather the provinces where it's being tested that water purification plants are not operating to their best abilities, and the need to actually get technology to enhance and improve is really very important. And now these as you see, the darker the color is, the more dry and arid the area is, and this is where now the real issue is really coming up. I think on Monday in the news there was a protest in Kwakwa in the Free State. They have not had water for 2 months. So, in all of this, I think the inclusion of engineers and really electronic, and in fact all the sectors within the discipline is so important, that when we study, you study with the knowledge that I'm studying something that I need to solve immediately. It's not theoretical completely. Yeah, so we're just going to move on from a bit of that depressing news. But I just want to spend time here. This technology, which I believe will really be a game changer for engineers, is the human machine-in-the-loop AI system. And it really, it's about responsible AI. As I've mentioned, AI, artificial intelligence, is one of the technologies identified in the 4 other technologies to be so, I lack a better word, so useful to the point that it's been seen in the money markets that it's very critical to understand previous data sets and also assist with big data. And I think in the decision making for engineers, it's so important, but it's responsible AI. It's not AI that will just be part of your humanoid, the robot. Then one day you see your robot stranded, you say, no, it's really responsible AI that you input data in, and what you input is what you get. And the importance of data sets is that it requires that even us as South Africa, that we happen to have so much data that it's in silos. And when we are using human-in-the-loop AI system, it's really going to put a lot of issues aside, and because that will ensure that we are building our own AI model with data that is coming from South Africa, right? And obviously, the company I've interacted with is they've built a system that can really assist in ensuring that there is that very cyclic way of utilizing this, and it can be embedded in other engineering firms. And yeah, moving on into these case studies that I'm bringing in, I felt it's so important because it's really, they're speaking about the need right now of engineers in our country. I don't know, I wish I can clone you guys. Do you know anyone with a cloning machine? Honestly, because when I looked at the size of that plant, it is so huge to a point that the SEZ that is actually doing that in collaboration with IDC and SASO, they said that in the building just of the hydrogen plant itself, they're going to require 8,500 workers. And they're finishing this feasibility study early next year. And then after that, the EPC stages, it starts. And then I would think, and then I looked at the number of engineer students graduating, like 35, 45. When are we going to get to 8,500?
Nice.
But also, hey, also engineering in the classroom, that's another thing, yeah? They say you start losing your mind without knowing you're losing your mind. Then you gain it back when you graduate. I don't know, I'm a scientist, we don't do such things. Huh? Yeah, so, but the permanency of the engineer professional body is required, and I think this should be a call to action even to say, is that there's about 3,500 engineers and technicians that will be required. And it's because they are going to be part of the hydrogen plant that will be producing ammonia and also all sorts of products, because some of the fertilizers we use, in fact the whole world that uses it needs ammonia, and look, it's everywhere, and South Africa for a very long time has been identified as an area that can produce that for the rest of the continent. But it's such a, I'm putting this so that it's a call to action for all of us to say that we must always advocate for engineers or people to get into the field. And getting into now the nuclear plant, I happen to be in the advisory in the Premier's office in the Eastern Cape, where this has been envisaged to be. So the Taspond nuclear plant, immediately in 1984 when Kuba was commissioned. Kuba is one of our oldest nuclear plants. It's actually the reason that makes Cape Town to be such a beautiful place. The way they say the most beautiful tourist city in the world is Cape Town, is because there's a resilience, there's a base load energy that's there, that's ensuring all the hotels, the tourism field is functioning. and all things that are requiring electrification, they are there. So, I mean, with the historical way on how load shedding has occurred, there is a need for South Africa to really move away from coal. Although, I mean, our coal in our on our grounds, in our soil, I mean, in our commodity, it's been said that we have coal that can last us for the next 200 years. But I mean, coal is dirty. Coal has destroyed the underground water in Mpumalanga. So a call to have it eliminated from our energy mix is a good call, and to bring in other energy technologies such as nuclear. Nuclear is green, does not produce any of the dirty gases that are part of global warming, as they say. So I just put this picture very specifically. So this was in the, I visited the Baraka plant. It's going to be commissioned next year in the UAE, Abu Dhabi. And they've built their 5,500 megawatts of capacity for their plant, and they're looking to do the same because they do believe that, you know, in the next 100 years they are going to thrive on not oil anymore, but on being a very advanced and modern country, and also in a state. So Abu Dhabi has, they're almost done. So this, the nuclear island, in building a nuclear plant, it takes about 8 to 10 years, but building the nuclear island is about 6 years. You are just pouring concrete and ensuring that the reactor is safe. So that's the same thing that happened. The French built Koeberg in collaboration with the British, and I think, as people know, Russia now is part of the maintenance, but Koeberg was commissioned in 1984. Some of you are like, I was not even conceived at that time, but it was commissioned in 1984, and it's 40 years old and it's still thriving. It just got its extended license right now. And so that's now the resilience of nuclear plants. So there is now a call to actually get Tastepan to get going, because in the past, the ESCOM has done, before, when they finished Koeberg, they went into Tastepan, they did all the EIA, and they identified that area to be quite good for the next nuclear plant. But I mean, what I wanted to highlight here is now when this happens, this part that takes close to 6 years, that means civil, structural engineers, electrical engineers, because they are quite important in the stage, in that whole EPC stage. And as I've mentioned, it's just a lot of concrete being poured in to ensure that the reactor is built in a safe environment. In conclusion, I've taken less than an hour. In conclusion, so 4R technologies have the potential to really revolutionize engineering practices, and I think in your studies, in your research, you have seen it, and you sort of are in a good path to actually start to include them in your research, and also in how you would want your engineering firm to really thrive in these economic times. I've mentioned how critical engineers are going to play a role in our developing economy. I mean, yeah, that's the stats. It's very scary that out of one engineer in South Africa, you have to look after for 3,100. But when you look at the developing or first world countries, the number is quite very, very low. So it's so important that as an engineer, you also become an advocate to get more people into the discipline. With that being said, colleagues, thank you so much for having me today. I really appreciate the invitation. As I've mentioned, I want to come back again, I'll bring the engineering company to come and share their studies here. Thank you so much.